Tropical Storm Bret and Cindy continue across the Atlantic on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for June 24th. So, our two storms still active right now, Bret and Cindy, although they're not as strong as we thought they might still be at this point. Cindy on a slow intensification trend, up to around 45 to 50 miles per hour right now, the 25th storm of the year so far around the world. And that's mainly what we're code blue for, Bret and Cindy, day 24 of hurricane season. Cindy will track further north and it will just pass the Lesser Antilles slightly to the north and then head probably towards Bermuda. Could be something to watch out for in the longer range, but those two storms still active. Bret is on its way out, might make it as a weak system to Central America. Day 42 of the Pacific hurricane season, and there's two areas of interest that we're eyeing quite closely now, with a medium and a high chance of development there. Looks like we're going to see two significant storms there in the next few days. In the Western Pacific, it's toned down slightly compared to the East Pac. Two areas of interest here as well now that we've marked, but they are both low chances at the moment and they might fight with each other, and so we can't really be very confident on whether either of them will form, whether it will be one or whether it might be both. North Indian Ocean though is looking fairly quiet. There's a little thunderstorm activity over there in the eastern coast of India predominantly, getting quite a lot of rainfall over that area right now. But no tropical cyclones over there. Check back the satellite imagery, look out for any of those red zones showing really high concentrations of rainfall in the last 24 hours. Some of it there in eastern India and some spots over there in northern part of South America, Venezuela, Colombia, into Central America there. A few spots of exceedingly high rainfall. And here's another graphical depiction from the visible enhanced satellite imagery with infrared hybrid, and you can see a lot of those convective tops over Central America there producing lots of rainfall. There's a little thunderstorm area over the Western Caribbean, and out towards the eastern area you can of course see Bret. Here he is, and it's not looking very good at this point. The convection is dying off and it is partly exposed, and this here is Cindy, which is looking a little bit better. This imagery might not quite do it as much justice as it could have. Convection is flaring up a little bit on that southern part of the storm right now, so it may be prepping up for perhaps another little strengthening phase. Will it get to hurricane status? That's a big question mark right now. I would still suggest no, but a little bit of rapid intensification will certainly put that to bed. But right now we're expecting probably a 60-65 mile per hour peak. Eastern Pacific still very messy right now. We're just about to see the formation of the initial system that has that 70% tag on it, and so I think we will start to see things by the time we get to tomorrow's Tropical Weather Bulletin. Will be quite interesting. And look at the sea surface temperature, so much energy for these systems to play with. Over 30 degrees Celsius waters, indeed possibly up to 32 off the coast of Mexico, where all the action might happen. In the Atlantic, a few warm spots there as well around Cuba and the Florida Strait, but out over the open waters even. Some really warm temperatures ahead of Cindy, and where Bret is right now around 28 or 29 degrees. So looking good for both systems. Bret of course will be overtaken by wind shear, and Cindy has a good shot here ahead of it. Dry air it will probably be facing, maybe some shear there as well. Western Pacific looking good as well. Extremely large swathes of warm waters around the Philippines up to Vietnam, round towards the Mariana Islands, all around 30 degrees Celsius temperatures there. North Indian Ocean also looking good, 30 degrees generally as well, and the Arabian Sea cooling down a little bit as those trade winds start to rev up as they usually do at this time of year with the onset of the monsoon. And in the Southwest Indian Ocean, things really cooling off here as we expect. It's off season now. But just for your information, Australian region, a little bit on the chilly side there as well, and in the South Pacific it is still above average there. It's really warm waters still off Vanuatu, but into the most southerly areas there, temperatures are waning. The El Nino effect is becoming more and more pronounced every time we see this anomaly graphic, and you can see there in the equatorial East Pacific really warm anomalies. The Atlantic also extremely warm anomalies there, widespread 3 degrees above average, and in the Eastern Pacific where those hotspots are right now along the coast of Mexico, looking good compared to the average there as well. Western Pacific is near average, slightly above, but not particularly so. Oceanic heat content is looking good in the Atlantic. There's certainly an abundance of energy across the Caribbean Sea and now spilling out into quite a few other locations as well, Gulf Stream and the Loop Current. In the Eastern Pacific, a few warm spots there as well, particularly in the Gulf of Tehuantepec, and in the Western Pacific, a good area there, large areas now with extremely high oceanic heat content. There's going to be a lot of fuel there this year. So, GFS computer model. Bret might still be a tropical storm as it passes closest to the northern tip of Venezuela and near the ABC Islands. It'll be interesting to see whether they have watches or warnings for those areas. And there's Cindy on the right hand side, obviously moving northwestwards and getting a little bit stronger later on, but it might weaken a little bit at first. This is up to 5 days, but towards the end of that 5-day period it might overcome its issues, and looks like GFS there has it becoming a hurricane by day 5. Eastern Pacific, looking out for these two systems. They'll pop up quite quickly. The first one there, a very broad system south of Mexico, and the other one there not far from Costa Rica that forms later on, and both of them there getting to decent tropical storm status. The one further behind probably getting to hurricane status. In the end, both of them will probably reach hurricane status, but I doubt we're going to get anything extremely powerful. Then again, there is really warm sea surface temperatures. The higher chances will be for the second one. In the Western Pacific, two things to look out for here. A weak system near the Philippines, but the GFS has really shifted its ideas now towards the Mariana Islands, where a small system there might take advantage of the conditions and track through the region near Saipan, possibly as a tropical storm. Interestingly, it's a short-lived system that forms there on that GFS run. And I'm wondering why. Maybe it's wind shear, perhaps it's interference from other systems nearby, or dry air intrusion. Check out the rainfall expectations then for the next 7 days, and most of it will remain offshore, but as is always the case with these systems that trail quite close to the coast of Mexico, it's the mountainous regions there along the coast that will be getting the highest amounts of rainfall. And we're looking at isolated amounts there in the next 7 days, possibly of up to 10 inches, maybe even slightly more than that. That's 10 inches there in southern Mexico, around about 250 millimeters, and a few areas getting up and above 5 inches as well. Out to sea though, that's where the very heavy rainfall will be, up to 22 inches there depicted by the GFS at the moment, and I imagine that will increase with time as both of those storms track over those open waters. Thankfully though, those very high rain amounts will remain far away from land. Let's check the long range then, day 5 to 10. We're looking at the Atlantic and this system, of course Cindy, moving up northwards quite close to Bermuda as a hurricane, and continues and steamrolls into southern Nova Scotia, just south of Halifax there, and then steers off towards the northeast, moving through Newfoundland and Labrador. So you can see the storm here probably getting to category 2 status, I would wager, and then continuing up into Nova Scotia. Massive questions as to whether that will happen at this point. It's still really a wait and see. Other models have nothing forming and Cindy to die off near Bermuda instead. Eastern Pacific, both of these systems, the first one weaker, the second one stronger and more compact, and there it is, getting to a decent intensity actually there, possibly category 4 status there on the GFS model. And what's that in the Atlantic? A third little thing going on there, something that generates in the Western Caribbean. It's not the regeneration of Bret, it's something else that forms over there in the Western Caribbean, and there it is moving through the Yucatan near day 10 and then out over the Gulf of Mexico, possibly as a TC. Wow. Scan the barcode on the top right and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where we'll have all of our usual items, including that hoodie there and that pillow which we're throwing at the screen as we always do, and are still waiting for Hone t-shirts, which are still very popular because we're obviously still waiting for that blasted storm. So what happens in the Scilly range? Well, that Atlantic system does get steam, and it does look like it becomes a tropical cyclone, or maybe even a subtropical cyclone there as it shifts up into the United States. So Who knows what will happen with that, but that is very long range, might not happen at all. We don't have any chances designated. What happens to the Eastern Pacific system? Well, it starts to die off very slowly. Maybe tropical storm force winds to the Baja California Peninsula, the southern part of it. And what happens to that Atlantic system? It again gets slurped up towards the northeast there and off the coast of Canada. You can talk about all of that in a quite active model section there on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13. We're nearly at 3,500 members. Maybe you'll be that lucky one. Don't get anything special, unfortunately, for that, but we'll think about it for 4,000 maybe. Anyway, what happened on this day? On June 24th, 1993, a very impressive storm, Category 5 Corin, an underestimated one as well. It appeared in my top 100 last year in Hurricane Week, and it was headed towards the Philippines, peaking in these early hours of June 24th, into the later hours as well. There's a visible image from early in the day UTC. That would obviously be later on local time there, as it was a peak intensity Category 5. Very powerful storm. 165 miles per hour is what we have down as our observations. That is 30 years ago today. Well, the next name in the Atlantic now is Don. In the Eastern Pacific, we're still waiting for Adrian, and in the Central Pacific, it is Hode. It is still Hode. Have we ever had a Don that was any good? Odds are this one won't be either. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Tallinn. And in the North Indian Ocean, it's still Tej. None of this monsoonal stuff will become that. We'll probably be waiting a few months until the North Indian Ocean Part 2 revs up in September, October. In the Australian region, the next name is Jasper. Southwest Indian Ocean, Gizani for a few more days. And in the South Pacific, it's Lola. That's all for tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.